Hey guys, the Comics Kid 2099 here, and after yesterday's extremely negative review of Star Wars Dark Empire 2, I wanted to do something a little bit more positive, a little bit more upbeat. And fortunately for you guys, and fortunately for me, I watched a movie last night, Wreck-It Ralph, and I'm going to talk to you guys about it. The long and short of it is, I really love this movie, and I'm going to try not to make this entire review just be me saying I love this movie, so I'm going to try and actually talk about stuff in this movie that works. I'm going to try and have this review have a little bit of substance to it. But needless to say, if you haven't seen the movie, it's been like 2 years, so if you're like me and you waited that long to go see the movie and you're curious, what did I think? I love this movie. So now go watch the movie, and then you can come back and hear me spoil stuff in this video. Anyway, the reason that I waited way late to watch this movie is because I am a huge fan of the TV series Gravity Falls. And you may be thinking, what does this have to do with Wreck-It Ralph? It is relevant, my friend. I am a huge fan of Gravity Falls, and I listened to this podcast called The Gravity Falls Gospel by a couple of guys. They are somewhat into the comic book scene, if you will, if you're a huge fan of comics, which if you're watching my channel, I'm assuming you are. If you like comics, then you've probably heard of these two guys. I don't remember their names, Chris Haley and Adam Warrock. I don't know Adam Warrock's actual last name, but they both do stuff that is part of the comic book scene, and they also do a podcast called The Gravity Falls Gossiper, where they talk about every episode of Gravity Falls as it happens. And since they were doing this as Gravity Falls Season 1 was unfolding, there was like a 3-month break where there were no new episodes of Gravity Falls happening. And so they were doing stuff to kind of fill the time until Gravity Falls would come back on, and one of the things that they did an episode on was Wreck-It Ralph. And so I saw that that was in their schedule, and I was like, you know what? I have heard some good things about that movie, but I haven't really watched it before. I never really sat down and said, I need to watch this movie. So last night I did just that. And I am so glad that I did. I think it would not be stretching it if I said that this is in my top 5 animated movies of all time. This is like Pixar level of good. And those people who like worship the ground that Pixar walks on, those people really annoy me most of the time, because like half of the movies that Pixar does, they just don't look interesting to me. Brave, Up, I know there's another one that I'm thinking of, WALL-E. Those movies, they just don't look very good to me. And part of it is that, like with WALL-E, the first trailer that I ever saw for it just instantly turned me off. A trailer, incidentally, is supposed to get people excited for a movie, and so if the only thing that's in your trailer is a robot rolling around in garbage and there's no dialogue or anything, that's probably not going to get people excited for your movie. Just a little heads up to all you potential movie makers out there. And so about half of these Pixar movies just don't really look appealing to me, and I know that 3 movies is not half. Pixar's done like 12 movies at this point, but the good Pixar movies, the ones that I really like The Incredibles, the first 2 Toy Story movies, the Monsters, Inc. movies, this is like on par with those movies. It is incredible, and I said at the beginning of the video that I don't need to just keep saying this movie is awesome, I love this movie, and I'm falling in danger of doing that. So one of the things that I really love about this movie is that it's aimed at children. I don't think there is a single, if there's any like adult humor, there's very little of it at all. Sometimes you'll have a movie like Shrek, which is, it's a kid's movie, but there's also a fair amount of shady humor in it, where they'll say something and it's like, that's not really for kids, that's for like 15 and up, but then the rest of the movie is more of a kid's movie. And this doesn't really do that. If it did, I didn't catch any of it. This is much more of a kid's movie than the Shrek movies, but it's also a very intelligent movie. It's a very well done movie. It's very well written. And those people, there are people out there who say, well, this is a kid's movie, but it's a really terrible film. The writing is awful. It's just really stupid. The acting is pretty bad, but it's a kid's movie, so that's okay. Those people really frustrate me, because this movie, Wreck-It Ralph, it demonstrates that you can be aimed at kids and still be well written and well produced and well made. And this movie does all of that so well. There are certain laws that you have to learn when you are in creative writing, and you have to try and become a creative writer. And I took a couple of creative writing classes in college, 3 to be precise, and these laws, they get ingrained into your brain, and you have to try and follow these rules before you can learn how to break them. That's something that my creative writing professor used to say, and this movie, it does such a good job of it maneuvers around these rules, it uses these rules, but at the same time, I did not think that this movie was predictable. For example, there's one rule: before you can fire Chekhovs gun at the end of Act 3, you have to show Chekhovs gun in Act 1. That means if you throw something into your movie at the end of your movie, you have to have seeded that thing's existence earlier in the movie. It could be an item, it could be like this special bomb that can destroy all of the bad guys, and if you just throw that in there at the end of your movie without telling your audience that it exists earlier in the movie, that's a little bit of a cheat. This movie doesn't do that. There's this particular thing that destroys a particular kind of bad guy, and I'm going to try and avoid spoilers. Even though this movie is 2 years old, I'm going to try and avoid spoiling stuff here. There's a particular thing that destroys a particular kind of bad guy, and it seeds that kind of thing earlier in the movie, and then by the time this sort of thing is brought back into play at the end of the movie, it's not a screenwriting cheat because they showed it happening earlier in the movie, and by the time it comes back, I'm like, oh, okay, it's back. Also, the main villain of this movie, there's a certain twist ending involving him, and it's seeded throughout the movie. Several times they're talking about this particular twist, and yet when it happens, I had no idea. I did not see it coming. And I was just like, I can't believe it. They did it. They talked about it so much in this movie, and they still threw me for a loop. I still did not see it coming. That is a balancing act. It's really hard to try and master that. You have to tell your audiences, hey, this is what's coming, but at the same time, you can't do it so much that they're going to know what's coming. You have to tell them, this is a thing that we're going to be pulling in later in the movie, but you can't tell them so much that they can see what's coming. And this movie is really excellent at managing to do that. Also, this movie, it balances a lot of characters, and it does so very well. You've got 4-ish main characters. You've got Ralph, who is the bad guy in another guy's video game, and then you've got this girl named Vanellope, who is a glitch in a racing arcade game, and then you've got Fix-It Felix Jr., who is the good guy in the game that Ralph is a bad guy in, and then you've got Commander Calhoun, who is kind of a Halo type character. And there's these 3 worlds that we're visiting throughout this movie, and it's really awesome that in each of these worlds, they each have a personality that is separate and unique unto itself. The world of Fix-It Felix Jr. feels so much different than the world of Hero's Duty or the world of Sugar Rush, and they all feel different and unique. And with Fix-It Felix Jr. and with Hero's Duty, we're only in those worlds for about 5 minutes each, but we still get a sense of what this world is like. We still get to know these worlds, even though we only spend about 10 minutes out of 90 minutes in the entire movie on both of those worlds together, and we still get a feeling of what those worlds are like. It's really good at giving us a sense of this world, or worlds as it may be, without spending too much time on those worlds. And then you've also got these characters. I would say that Ralph and Vanellope, they are our main 2 characters, and then you've got sort of B characters in the form of Calhoun and Fix-It Felix Jr. And even though Calhoun and Fix-It Felix Jr. they're not in the movie a whole lot, they still get some good moments in this movie. They still get to do things that they make them feel like real characters. Sometimes you would have a movie and you've got a B character who does just one thing in that movie, and that's all that they're supposed to do, and as a result, they don't really feel like a real fleshed out, real character. In this movie, Fix-It Felix Jr., he doesn't get to do a whole lot, but he does feel like a real character. He has personality, and part of that is Jack McBayer just bringing this character to life. He played Kenneth in 30 Rock, and I just adore him so much, and he does a really good job of bringing Fix-It Felix Jr. to life. And then you've got Jane Lynch. I never in a million years thought that she would be good as a sort of boot camp director type character in the world of Halo. I never thought that she would be that kind of character and would be able to do it well, but she does. And there's not a whole lot going on with her, but what is going on makes her feel like a very real and fleshed out character. And between these two characters, they only get maybe a fifth of the movie's screen time to kind of play around and do their thing, but that's enough to make them feel like real characters. And then you've got Vanellope and Ralph, and these two characters, they kind of have paralleling character arcs. And that's another thing, is that having a character go through a character arc where they start off in one point and then they possibly go through a change where they have the opportunity to become a different kind of person by the end of the story, and then they decide if they are going to become a different kind of person or not. Having a character go through a character arc, that is something that a good, well-told story needs to have. And sometimes you've got these kids' movies that people will defend saying, well, it's a kids' movie, it doesn't need to be good, it doesn't have to be well-made, and they will skip out on the character arc. They will just kind of gloss over it, and it's like, look, we're a kids' movie, we don't have to follow the rules of screenwriting. This movie, it follows the rules. It has characters, they have personalities, they go through character arcs. Vanellope and Ralph, they both have very similar journeys that they have to go on. And this movie surprised me a couple of times. It does things where I'm like, oh wow, this character is actually going to do something different than what I thought they were going to do. And it's just so incredible that this movie was able to do all of these things so very well. It astounds me that it's a movie that's aimed at kids who are like 12 and under, and I'm certain that there's people my age who went to see this movie, and probably they went to see it without even the aid of a child. They probably just went to go see it by themselves. But this movie is aimed at little kids, and yet it puts so much thought into the writing, the dialogue, and building the world, and building these characters up and putting them on their journeys. And I don't really have a whole lot else to say, because if I do, then I'm probably going to spoil more of this movie. And I really don't want to spoil it. If you are like me and you did not go and watch this movie, go watch this movie. It's awesome. You need to spend a couple hours watching it, and then you're going to want to buy it. You're going to want to own this movie and watch it many times, probably twice a year or something like that. This is a really fun movie, a really enjoyable movie, and it's a well-done movie. I think that's what I keep coming back on, is that this is a kids' movie. It's made for kids, but at the same time, if you're not a kid, if you're older, you can watch this and you can enjoy it on a level of, that was a really well-made movie, a really well-produced, well-written movie, and it does all of these things very well. That's what I really liked about it. There's so many more things, though, that you could probably watch and pick out that I didn't even talk about in this video. So that's all I had to say. I hope that you guys liked this review, and I hope that I was able to convince you to go watch Wreck-It Ralph, because I'm probably going to watch it again in the very near future. That's all I have to say, so I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back later in the week with a review of an episode of Batman the Animated Series. So, until then, I will see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of the day.